Hey guys, so today I wanted to talk about something that's kind of been irking me ever since I heard about it, and that is Ascension. Ascension is the ability to ascend your gear and your weapons to the max level, introduced in House of Wolves. Now before I move forward, I'm just going to say that Ascension for armor is great. I love it. It introduces flexibility in your gear options, it allows people to look how they want without a massive hit to your stats or your ability. No problems at all with armor. The weapons are where one might start to see a problem. Now you might say, Datto, what could you possibly hate about upgrading your favorite weapons? Fatebringer? Vision of Confluence? Found Verdict? And to that extent, I don't hate it. I love it. You kidding me? 365 Fatebringer, Vision of Confluence? Hell yeah. Those weapons are amazing. I'm down for that. I have all that stuff upgraded to the max, and I upgraded it first, really quick. Here's a problem. This decreases weapon parity across the entire game. Here's what I don't like. I can't get excited about weapons in the House of Wolves. At all. Nothing excites me whatsoever. These weapons from the past are so powerful and so good that the only way I could ever be bothered to use something else is if it was absolutely 100% better. Because I can bring these super powerful weapons up with me, or because I can still go back and get them, I have absolutely zero response to getting loot anymore. I don't care, because nothing is going to be better than what I have. Obviously, there's a large group of people who do not experience this problem. Not everyone has this problem, specifically newer players. But there isn't much stopping people from going back to the past and getting these weapons, especially now that the content is sort of easier. Now, is that a problem with Ascension or the weapons themselves? Well, it's a little bit of both. For example, Field Scout on scout rifles is really good. 27 shots in the magazine. It is now impossible to roll Field Scout on new scout rifles in the House of Wolves. You can't get that bonus anymore. Therefore, automatically, every scout rifle that I ever get going forward until the next wave of content is immediately going to be garbage. Hygeia Noble S? Pass. The Crucible Scout? Snore. I don't care, because there's no way those weapons will ever be better than anything from the past. Vision of Confluence and Fang come with elements on them as well, which is another story in itself that I won't get into today. But why the hell would you pick anything else, at least from a PvE perspective, over those weapons? You wouldn't. Jewel of Osiris versus the Scholar from Trials of Osiris. Jewel of Osiris is a pretty good hand cannon. The Scholar is a high damage scout rifle. A comparison of these two weapons is a conversation we could have as to which is better for PvE. However, due to Ascension, this isn't even anything remotely close to a conversation anymore, because stuff from the past kicks the absolute crap out of both of these weapons. You're going to use Jewel of Osiris over Fatebringer for PvE? You're going to use Scholar over Vision or Fang? Hell no! I'm mentioning scout rifles a lot, but this applies to a lot of weapons. Black Hammer for snipers. It's insanely good for PvE still. Shotgun? Found Verdict. There aren't many things appealing enough to warrant using over stuff from the past. However, in a way, perhaps this was done to avoid power creep. Power creep has become pretty relevant in the last decade or two of games, mainly in MMOs or any other persistent world. With each expansion of the game, you need to grant better weapons to take on stronger foes. This is called progression. You want players to experience progression because you want them to feel like they are getting stronger and moving towards something better. You want to incentivize this new content with better loot, better armor, but this causes power creep. This causes content from the past to be irrelevant. So, you make the content from the past still relevant by making it equal to the present. Simple, right? Well, not in our case, because in some regard, to keep weapon parity interesting, you need some form of power creep, as bad as it might be. I'll give an example. I know you guys love World of Warcraft references, so here's another one. Thunder Fury was a weapon earned in the original version of World of Warcraft. It was an incredibly good weapon for tanking because of a bonus on the weapon that really helps out tanks. But this weapon was so good that some people used it up until not the next expansion, but the expansion after that until it was finally deemed weaker than current items. Now granted, a lot of people dropped the weapon in classic version of WoW, and a lot of people dropped it in the next expansion as well, but it just goes to show that people are going to use the most effective thing in the game until it is no longer the most effective thing in the game, and WoW's first expansion had massive power creep, absolutely massive. It's just a very fine line that needs to be walked. You still want to incentivize old content as to not waste it, but at the same time, you want to incentivize the new stuff with shiny new weapons and armor. This is pretty tough to do, especially with a game like Destiny. With armor, I think it's worked out just fine because beyond light levels, it doesn't introduce the same problems as the weapons do. Armor can come with very similar stats that don't affect damage nearly as much as weapons do. It's more of an aesthetic choice as opposed to a power choice. It's horizontal progression or freedom as opposed to vertical progression, which is the kind of progression you really want to be aiming for with any sort of power increase. If you can keep people arguing about what's the best X, Y, and Z, that's a good thing. With the power choice, obviously you're going to use the absolute strongest thing because why the hell wouldn't you? But the problem is that this can create stagnation. While Ascension is still technically progression, it's very boring progression. The fun of the new expansion and new content comes with getting new loot, but because these things from the past are so strong, the appeal of new loot disappears. Because Destiny is the way that it is, there aren't many stat combinations that are considered good. So only certain weapon combinations are going to be good unless buffed otherwise, but this is another story. Right now, I'm playing a looting game where the loot does not excite me, nor will any loot for basically the entirety of House of Wolves. I stopped being excited within the first week, within the first couple of days. This isn't just a case of me playing a lot either and just having everything. In the Dark Below, I was still excited to get loot from Crota's End at least until I had everything. Now we have two sources of loot, Trials of Osiris and Prison of Elders, and I couldn't give a gosh dang about either, at least on the weapons front, but weapons are the most exciting part. You get a new piece of armor, it's cool. You get a new weapon, you're supposed to be stoked as hell. Come to think of it, I don't think there's a single thing from the House of Wolves expansion weapon-wise that I use on any sort of serious level. Maybe Matador 64, which is literally just a Fellwinter's clone, which I don't think I even should be using because I think Fellwinter's might have the slightest edge in power. Maybe Lord of Wolves in PvE, which I could totally live without. As much as I love having my Fatebringer, my Vision of Confluence, Found Verdict, all 365, part of me just wants the past to stay in the past. I want to get excited about new weapons when an expansion comes out. After all, that's the major appeal. Right now, I can't do that. Within a week, I learned that I will not have to care about basically any new weapons, minus the exotics, in which I think Bungie did a great job with making those weapons interesting, or at the very least more appealing than Dark Below exotics. But I hope for the future that this isn't the system that they're going to be sticking with. I'm guessing that this Year 1 series of weapons will be ending with the Comet expansion, so eventually these weapons will be lost to the past. House of Wolves is unfortunately a snooze fest when it comes to new weapons because nothing is better than weapons from the past. I might be alone on this, but I'm more than willing to leave stuff like Fatebringer and Vision of Confluence in the past when new stuff comes around, which is supposed to be more powerful. I think it might be a little bit better if we had horizontal progression with regards to weapon choices. After all, that's the ideal. But the way the weapons were designed doesn't point too much to possible horizontal progression, and Bungie is not going to nerf any of that stuff this late in the game. I'd be using a lot of the new stuff if I couldn't upgrade anything from the past. Weapon Ascension, to a degree, kind of feels like it was implemented to just make people happy to make up for Dark Below's exotic upgrading and leveling system that no one really liked. Now, I don't expect Bungie to release 20 new exotics every single expansion, that's pretty unreasonable to request. So with regards to exotics being upgradable, I'm fine with that just because of the situation that they're put in. I'm just trying to provide some food for thought, something to think about. I know a lot of my clanmates and I have a similar feeling about this issue, and I know this issue definitely isn't going to apply to everyone, but I'm sure there are at least some of you who feel this way. Yeah, it's cool to have old weapons and the weapons from the past continue to be relevant, and yeah, the weapons from this age are only going to be useful for a certain amount of time, probably until the next expansion, which is when they'll probably rotate out. I just don't think that's a good thing for any loot-driven game where I'm only getting excited for new loot once a year or something. But that's all I have for you guys on Ascension. I know this probably isn't going to be a crowd pleaser, but it's just something to think about. Thank you all very much for watching, and please don't hate me.